But look, I just want to say hello and welcome to this Leap Summits workshop, Education for the Liberation of Human Potential, Education Reimagined, Schools Built for Real People. My name is Mark Vickers-Willis, the Director of Community Engagement from New Road School in Santa Monica, California. And it gives me great pleasure to be here. It's this morning here in California, quite early. It gives me great pleasure to be here with three esteemed colleagues and friends. Mr. Luthern Williams, our head of school, Mario Johansson, the Director of Student Wellness and Human Development, and Daniela Panese, Assistant Head of School for Program. We aim to present for around 30 minutes or so, leaving time at the end for some of the Q&A as well with you all. I'd like to begin by sharing a video that sets a context of our school. And here's some pictures of us all looking very sprightly.
New Roads was founded in 1995, but its history is much more deeply rooted in the American story. Our founders looked around and they discovered that there wasn't a racially, culturally, and socioeconomically integrated school in Los Angeles. And they said to themselves, how is this American social experiment ever going to work if children can't live and learn together? New Roads was founded with the assumption that diversity enriches the education of the students and prepares them for life. And so when our school was built, over 50% of the students received financial aid because our founders realized that you needed to create a learning environment that really reflected LA and therefore reflected life. Made for this moment means breaking out of the industrial model of education. It means giving a personalized education that really develops the full potential of each student. New Roads is a school where the climate and culture is founded on love, respect, and compassion. Because we believe in the inherent dignity and worth of everybody. Because the well-being of our young people is at the heart of our school. Because learning should be relevant, meaningful, and connected. Because we are committed to anti-racism. Because we invest in authentic diversity. Because we champion climate justice. We have always done education this way, and the world is ready for us. Not in some distant, utopic future. Right now, this moment.
Well, thank you for that, Luthern. Can you tell us, please, just about New Roads and why it was founded?
Well, it's interesting, and the video commented on this a little bit, Mark. I think the New Roads story actually goes back to the foundation of the country into the Enlightenment. New Roads, I think really comes out of this sense that everyone has inherent dignity and worth, and that human potential is infinite. And it's interesting, I think that, that gave birth to this incredible but challenging country called America. And this basic premise, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so obviously from the beginning of the story, there were groups of people who were left out. Some of those groups, that looked like me, that were sort of considered three-fifths human beings within this framework. Women were left out, Native Americans were left out. There were so many people that were not included in this idea. And this extended to education. And the real turning point in America that really started to look at this seriously in education and to challenge this was Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954. Brown versus the Board of Education struck down segregation in schools because prior to that, white children and Black children went to different schools. They were separate and usually unequal. And the court ruled that this was unconstitutional and broadened this notion of who is included within this American dream and received full rights within this American social experiment. And that, led to an attempt to integrate the schools, but it was resisted because at that time, the underlying premise was that that integration was something to solve a moral wrong. It was not something that would enhance education. Quite the contrary. The assumption was that it would diminish the education of whites. So the notion of diversity was resisted on all levels. And, I actually was a beneficiary of integration of the public schools. I went to a school that initially was, I went to a school that was primarily African-American when I was a young child, and my parents soon moved to an affluent white community, and I was able to get an education in a predominantly white affluent school, which really made all the difference in terms of allowing me to determine my own destiny. But while I was there, it was clear that diversity was something that was unwanted. Diversity was something that was considered to diminish the quality of the school. And I felt that I needed to prove myself, that I was assumed to be unworthy to be there, that I had to prove that I was just as good, if not better, than my peers. And this, is where New Roads comes into the story. The founders looked around in 1995 and they said, even though it's more than 40 years after Brown versus the Board of Education and shortly after the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles, we don't have a school where children who look like Los Angeles actually live and learn together. They said, if this great American social experiment is going to work, then it starts with children living and learning together, and that it's only right that all children should have access to a high quality education rich in the arts. And that gave birth to New Roads. And the underlying assumption was that diversity enriched the educational experience. And this is something that now research has caught up with, whether you talk about academic outcomes or you're talking about, productivity in the workforce. The diversity is an asset. It is not something that is a detractor. And that moves from the concepts that for New Roads from integration to integrative. Integration was forced. It was a moral remedy to solve a social problem and to right a wrong. Integrative, the model of New Roads, assumes that diversity brings richness to the education, that in the exchange and in the encounter, kids deepen their thinking, they become more complex problem solvers, and that they also are able to develop the kinds of social skills that allow them to navigate differences and to work across differences for the common good. And this is, what makes New Roads so unique is that, as I said, I was someone who lived in the integration model, which was resisted. But at New Roads, what the students have the opportunity to do is to remove their mask and remove their armor and to be vulnerable. And that is where full human potential can be discovered in all of its forms. And the school's climate and culture of the big embrace of love, respect, and compassion allows for children to develop their unique talents and also to develop a connection to each other that is authentic so that they understand the connection that we all have as human beings. So it honors the differences and it also promotes the linkages and it allows children to remove their mask and armor. And I think your next two speakers are going to tell us how the school specifically does that.
Thank you, Lufern. I really appreciate you sort of setting the context, and I think it's so important, particularly considering our audience today, trying to position this within the American context, but also where we are in Santa Monica in California. And it gives me real pleasure now to pass over to Mario Johansson, our Director of Student Wellness and Human Development, who is going to just talk a little bit more about climate and culture, so Mario, I'd like to ask you, what role does the climate and culture of the school play in liberating the potential of our students? And your mute is on right now. You might want to unmute there, mate.
There we go. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mark. And thank you for that question. Really great to be here with you all this morning. I'd like to begin answering your question with a direct student perspectives from two recent graduates, because in my opinion, student voices, they really provide an embodied representation of key features of our educational experience that I'm going to talk about. So let's take a look at this clip, please.
And that takes me to the reason I chose to come to New Roads out of all the schools I had looked at in the first place. And no, it was not the bagels and hot chocolate we got every Friday morning at the elementary school, I promise. When my parents asked my brother and I where we wanted to attend and why, my reason for going to New Roads was that the people here made me comfortable. So thanks, guys. But my brother, yeah, sure, thanks you guys. You guys did it for me, so I appreciate you all. Now, my brother, he chose Crossroads instead. I'm sure he's watching, crying on the live stream right now. And we've since disowned him. It's a big mistake on his part. And well, I'm sure he had a great time. I know for a fact that the student body there, I'm sorry, Charlie, but I gotta say it, the student body there, and anywhere else for that matter, didn't and doesn't have the same heart at New Roads. That's why a 9-year-old kid like me, who couldn't even walk up to the Starbucks barista to ask for a cup of water, and who still gets red-faced in pretty much every conversation, even giving this speech right now, actually, I was confident enough to go to Ben Brier's birthday party and jump on his trampoline with a bunch of people I had just met days earlier, because I knew that I was already at home with you all. That same feeling, I might use a Kleenex here. That same feeling has since allowed me to pursue what makes me happy without fear of judgment. It's how I was able to start debating in 7th grade and start playing for the basketball team in 12th. I see you in the back, Coach Trey, by the way. It's how I broke out of my social shell. It's how I've become who I am now as an actual adult, not just as a 6th grader. So, and that takes me to the reason I chose to come to New.
I'll just pass on to the next video here.
During orientation, I looked around and saw very few faces that looked like mine. I thought, well, this place is definitely different than what I'm used to. And honestly speaking, I didn't know if I meant that in a good way or bad. I knew that New Roads was known for teaching its kids to be intellectually curious, daring, compassionate, understanding, loving, and free. However, did that mean that I needed to be like the majority of the other kids to achieve my goals? My head started spinning as I thought about how out of place I suddenly felt. I felt an impulse just to follow everyone and copy what they were doing. During lunch, I began to distance myself because I didn't know if I had a place in what was known as the Rainbow Tribe. I then began to doubt my decision to attend this school that I knew would provide me with countless amount of opportunities for personal growth. By the end of lunch, with questions of transferring out running around in my mind and not expecting what was to come, next I headed to the final class of the day, Mysteries. This is where things got interesting. The instructor, Mo, was one of the most coolest and authentic teachers that I encountered that day. She opened the freshman council class with a series of questions that changed the trajectory of my life and defined my high school career. Who are you? And who do you hope to become 4 years down the line, she asked. And once again, my head started spinning as I silently thought to myself, who am I really? And who do I want to become? And how do I want to feel? It was the first space that I ever entered that was focused solely on what it means to be a young adult, trying to find your way in the world, and more importantly, within yourself. It was during that class that I decided that I would not spend my high school years enduring imposter syndrome. that I would show up as me, Aliyah Mack in all of her glory, a strong, caring, nurturing, thoughtful, opinionated Black girl from Inglewood who spoke with an undeniably Black LA accent. Now that
So Mario, looking at these two videos or these two clips of the students, how do you think climate and culture explains the experiences here of Ben and Aaliyah and our other students?
Thanks again, Mark. It puts a smile on my face every time I see those kids again. You know, they just make me happy. So at New Roads, the framing in which we conceptualize our human development approach, it starts with climate and culture. Climate and culture constitute the container of relational experiencing. It's kind of like in the case of high school, climate and culture determine whether young people feel seen, heard, and valued versus invisible, insignificant, and worthless. Ben really, that Aaliyah voice again, Ben really captured the essence of this when he talked about feeling so comfortable in his own skin at school that he was free to explore other aspects of his personality. Okay, let me just say New Roads is not a convent, right? We've got our stuff like any other high school, but I have to tell you, Mark, we take such pride in the fact that both Ben and Aliyah, and by extension, the mainstay of our students, don't exhaust themselves by worrying about how to survive high school, right? How to be popular, how to fit in, how to avoid the landmines of certain destruction. Instead, our kids talk about how they're inspired by school, right? They're able to come to school to discover themselves. The New Roads Climate and Culture really can be distilled down to 3 affirmative human development practices that I'm going to briefly talk about: radical inclusion, a relational orientation, and holistic integration. So radical inclusion is all about the big embrace, right? It's all about opening up our big arms and providing kids a space to just say, we love you, right? When you first get there, just to know that you are loved and you are cared for, right? We feel that when kids are encouraged to show up as their most authentic selves and always respect the other folks for doing the same, it instills in them a deep sense of value for autonomy, for authenticity, for difference, and for acceptance. Our overall goal is to get kids to feel so comfortable and safe that, like Lutheran talked about, they're able to remove the mask that they often feel they have to wear as protective armor against their own peers. Our motto at New Roads is that if you have enough courage to love and accept yourself for who you most genuinely identify as, we're here for you. We're here to embrace you. This is what Aliyah was talking about when she described feeling so comfortable and the deep sense of belonging, and how it allowed her to lean proudly into all aspects of her identity that define her as a young Black woman, despite the fact that she, quote, didn't look like most of the other students. She was among only 2 African-American girls in the entire senior class that particular year. But Aliyah spent the year talking about how she discovered her voice in that space, in that container, right? So second, there's the practice of relational orientation, which is all about integrating self-care, care for others, and care for the planet into an embodied reality of how we hold space and connect with the universe. Our teaching at New Roads eschews any promotion of transactional exchanges within our community, right? It's not about, this for this, quid pro quo, tit for tat, right? Instead, we teach young people that one of the most critical capacities to adopt is the ability to build, establish, and sustain healthy relationships. Ben talked about how the deeply meaningful relationships he developed with kids who were vastly different from himself, yet had built solid connections rooted in shared identities and shared interests. He also talked about how these relationships functioned as nourishment for his soul. Our relational orientation honors the linkages among diverse individuals in a radically inclusive social field, while generating an abiding appreciation for healthy, transformative relationships, which for us really is the root of wellness and well-being. So lastly, there's this practice of holistic integration. The Brown versus Board determination of integration that Lutheran talked about earlier, as he said, was strictly focused on legal mandates surrounding social interaction, which was compulsory and therefore, as we know, largely resisted. Holistic integration is precisely the opposite. Holistic integration serves as the conduit between radical inclusion and relational orientation. It stands in the middle insofar as both the social and the emotional cohere together in the practice of holistic integration. Our goal under holistic integration is to foster, create, nurture, and sustain a dynamic variety of opportunities for integrating individuals and groups across a wide spectrum of difference, with the goal of achieving a harmonious cacophony within a healthy, joyous relational field. New Roads, as Lutheran always says, is all jazz, a harmonious cacophony. It's a lot of noise, but it all comes together into a beautiful sound. These two students that I shared with you today are typical examples of how we leverage diversity to show how critical difference is to the expansion of human curiosity, imagination, ingenuity, and the liberation of human potential. Ben and Alia embody radical acts of inclusion, and both of them are relationally oriented in all aspects of their being, as you got an opportunity to see. They're also obviously really comfortable holistically integrating into any relational field of experience in which they find themselves. That is what wellness looks like for us at New Roads. It really is a collective experience that comes together in this container of climate and culture. Thanks so much, Mark.
Well, thank you very much, Mario. I love when you described harmonious cacophony. I think it's such a wonderful description. And as you say, Lutheran often refers to our school as jazz in action. So I think that's very, very true. Well, thank you, Lutheran, for sort of setting that context. And thank you, Mario, for sort of sharing with us that importance of the climate and culture and how it plays out in student experiences. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce Daniela Panese, our Associate Head of School of Program. And she is going to talk a little bit about the program. So I'd like to say, Daniela, how does New Roads program tear down the walls between school and life?
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. In his last remarks, Mario talked about a student who would demonstrate how holistic integration is achieved through his independent study project. So I do want to take a moment to listen to Liam, who will tell us about his independent study project at New Roads.
Thank you. I'll play it now.
Hi, my name is Liam and I'm a junior and I've been at New Roads since 6th grade. My favorite part so far of high school has been the independent study project known as an ISP. I started my ISP in 10th grade knowing that I was passionate about Los Angeles and affordable housing, and I was looking for an outlet to explore that passion. Now, because the ISP essentially acts as a class, I was actually incentivized to work on my passion, which I really wouldn't have a chance to do otherwise. What began as a very general topic was quickly refined, and now I'm on my second year of that ISP, which I titled Who is Housed When Money Talks, which I named after Barbara Kruger's mural that I pass on my way to school. The ISP has given me a chance to go in-depth on the zoning laws in Los Angeles and how this impacts access to affordable housing. The topic is extremely intersectional, involving aspects of sociology, urban studies, race relations, architecture, and much more. Through this project, I also interned for a California Assembly members campaign and presented to the whole upper school about down-ballot voting and the importance that the California state legislature has in making housing and zoning laws. What I learned is that no topic or subject is truly one-dimensional. I could have never predicted how my project is turning out, and the chance to take a topic I like and turn it into a research project where I could truly learn from a place of natural curiosity was instrumental in helping me identify my passion.
So I want to say, I think the buffering there probably helped with the translator because he was speaking very fast. But Daniela, thanks for sharing this video. Can you, again, sort of provide this as an introduction to show how our program really tears down those walls between school and life in the way that we teach?
Thank you, Mark. Well, as an authentically diverse community, New Roads truly understands the value of connection, well-being, and joy.
Hi, my name.
Our village delights in learning because our students are engaged in their studies and they participate in their learning through the empathic facilitation of our faculty. As Mario mentioned earlier, we must tear down the walls between school and life. Here at New Roads, we graduate courageous citizens of conscience that understand holistically their impact through the deep relationships that they're able to foster in our community. In turn, our students leave New Roads with a greater sense of belonging, a commitment to the humanity in each of us, deep respect for varying perspectives, and an understanding that radical change for our people in this planet must begin with loving kindness. So how do we achieve all of this in our village? To codify our integrative approach to teaching and learning 3 years ago, we embarked on a journey of self-discovery in our community. We read The Developing Mind by Dr. Dan Siegel, UCLA School of Medicine clinical professor of psychology, psychiatry, and world-renowned Harvard-trained expert of interpersonal neurobiology. And as a school, we asked ourselves these questions. What is the role of emotions in the learning process? How do emotions shape the relationships between and among teachers and students that impact the culture and climate of the classroom? And what do we need to know as educators and be able to do in order to cultivate this climate and culture for an integrative mind? We're constantly evolving as an institution to meet the needs of our young people. Mario painted you a picture of the climate and culture at New Roads. Our work with Dan Siegel helped us realize that the young people in our care are not just disembodied brains. They are embodied and present beings. And as such, our faculty, administration, and staff must be attuned to them and be prepared to teach them however they may show up for us. In this vein, their humanity must be recognized. Their well-being must be at the core of our teaching, and our curriculum and assessment must evolve to meet them, our young people. As we continue to deepen our educational model at New Roads, we recognize that our practices are beyond brain-based, they're mind-based and connected to our commitments as a school. Our students must be recognized beyond just their cognitive abilities, because their mind is the mind is within and through each of us and is much more complex than we've ever imagined. You cannot teach without first considering the holistic needs of the young people in your care. As educators, we do not teach disembodied brains. The possibilities are endless for our students when they're held by our faculty. And the role of the New Roads teacher is the present empathic facilitator of human development, social, emotional, and intellectual. They are the liberators of human potential. Our faculty see learning through the eyes of the student. Incorporating our learnings from Dan Siegel, we recognize that our students are embodied and our teaching must be meaningful, relevant, and connected for them. This teaching is a liberated pedagogy as it fosters well-being and optimal conditions for learning. Only when learning is embodied can students develop enduring understanding and skills that they can apply in various contexts and contribute to society and the common good. This is learning for life. Our students are encouraged to follow their passions in a non-linear trajectory, which you can see here in this slide. And this non-linear trajectory honors a human system. Every schedule at New Roads is personalized for each young person in our program. You witnessed this in Liam's description of his independent study project. Liam delights in learning and uses every opportunity in the curricular and co-curricular program to discover who he truly is authentically at New Roads. As is life, New Roads understands learning takes time, connection, and is process and discovery driven. This allows for students to find meaning in their learning and make connections for a lifetime. So to summarize my answer, Mark, New Roads faculty create the container for social, emotional, relational, and intellectual belonging in their classrooms through the climate and culture that they encourage. This allows for our students to build authentic and meaningful relationships with their teachers and one another, helping our young people make meaning of the world through their learning. The container, the sacred space our faculty holds in the magic of their classrooms, honors the individuality of every person while recognizing that at the heart of our teaching is humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. That was beautifully, beautifully put. And I know we're just going to, I'd like to actually hand back over to you, Luthern, just to sort of conclude before we go to some questions from our wonderful audience. You know, today the sort of key topic that we've been talking about is education reimagined. You're a leader who, you know, I believe is quite a visionary, and you're someone who thinks deeply about this all the time. And I get to see you in action in all sorts of forums, you know, talking about this very eloquently and encouraging, you know, our whole faculty and our whole community to continue searching for, you know, what is needed to really help educate our young people and liberate their human potential. But as a leader, what do you think or believe is at stake if we don't reimagine education? And I think you're on mute. Sorry.
I think that and I think we've hit on this throughout the presentation in various ways, but I think the industrial model of education is fundamentally broken and built on faulty assumptions, because it's clear that one size fits all fits no one. And it doesn't allow us to develop human potential in all of its forms and to really address the overall well-being and human development of children, which I think is really the role of schools, is to do human development. And I think the premise that New Roads is built on is that we have to create environments where children are able to respect and develop compassion for the whole spectrum of humanity. And our world is in desperate need of these kinds of people who can work across differences and break down the polarization and find common ground and compromise. And if we don't do that, I feel that we will destroy ourselves. And so really, I think part of the hope of not only the United States, which is really polarized, but the world, which is polarized, and all of these existential threats, including climate change, are going to require a global response where people can work across differences, they can find common ground, and they can compromise. Otherwise, I think we will destroy ourselves. So I think ultimately the role of schools at this moment in time is urgent, and there is a need for us to save ourselves from ourselves by cultivating people who are better than we are.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I know one of the things you often talk about too is in that understanding ourselves, other, and our environment better also allows us to creatively innovate and solve the sorts of problems that we're obviously facing with these existential threats, you know, across the globe. And I know we've got one more clip of one of our students, Jordan Carlin, who is graduating this year, who I think sort of pulls a lot of the threads of what we've been discussing today. And we think about the context, we think about the climate and culture, but we also then think about the programming and how these young people are able to liberate their human potential.
Well, I think, Mark, if I can just say one thing before you sort of put on the video, I think you were talking about, even if you think about this from an economic imperative, it's clear that we need to develop all children. And I think that the system where it's an industrialized system where, you know, one size fits all, we leave so much human potential undeveloped. And all of that human potential is going to need to be developed in order for us to really deal with the problems that these children are, to equip them to deal with the problems that they're going to face in the world.
Thank you.
I'm Jordan, and I'm going to be going to Harvey Mudd College this next year. New Roads has helped enable me to liberate my full human potential through the very wide wealth of opportunities that it's provided me through things like robotics, technical theater, debate, advanced math classes, science classes, kind of literally everything I could possibly imagine I've been able to accomplish or do at New Roads. Yeah, I think that the authentic diversity at New Roads really comes across in the actual lessons, in the conversations that we're having in classrooms. You know, the teacher might pose some topic that initially you might think is going to have some very simple cut and dry answer because you're looking at it from just your perspective, but then you start to see the wide, breadth of different ideas that different people have through diverse, not just, racially or socially, but diverse in literally every which way, in terms of personalities, racially, socially, ideologically speaking, every which way the community can be diverse it is, and that really comes across in these discussions where you're hearing these other perspectives on different issues that you might have never even imagined. It's structured enough, you have everyone's taking these core classes, everyone's taking, for example, in 12th grade, everyone has to take a social science class. You have the freedom to pick whether you're taking a class about the modern Middle East, or about psychology, or world religions, or whatever it may be. And I think this is true even more so in electives. I think there's really no better example of it than in electives at New Roads. There are literally countless electives in the arts, in STEM, in creative writing, in literally anything you can possibly imagine. There's a class that you can take to kind of further that, further your expression of that, further your knowledge in that field, further your, continue to pursue that. I think that all of the teachers really encourage you to take what they're, all of the teachers at New Roads really encourage you, us as the students, to take what they're teaching and run with that, to take the next step, to apply that to whatever, else is going on in our lives. To say, oh, in biology, for instance, we were learning about fungus, fungi and all of that. And I've always been really into baking and yeast and all of that. And so I ended up pursuing then from that an independent study project all about yeast. Yeast is a single-celled fungus, kind of different than most of the others, very unique, very different. And so I then spent a whole year in 10th grade researching, using a bunch of the equipment here at New Roads, growing starters at home, analyzing them under the microscopes and dissecting scopes and things like that. And so New Roads really pushes you and encourages that and makes that a possibility in the first place. I'm someone who's always really enjoyed learning prior to New Roads, and especially at New Roads, because New Roads has really fostered that love of learning. I think a large part of that is just the way in which things are taught. It's really engaging, it's really hands-on, it's really, yes, we're all learning the same general things, but you can really kind of spin that to how you want to learn, what you want to learn about, dive deeper into what really matters to you. And I think that this is especially true in things like math. For me, I've always been very much so a STEM kid, math, science. And so I was at New Roads able to, I joined New Roads in 7th grade, and I was able to start taking more advanced math classes pretty much from the get-go. And as that kind of got its way, as I worked my way up through that 9th grade, I took advanced pre-calc. And then New Roads' traditional math sequence was then to do Calc A in 10th grade, or in 1 year, and Calc B in the 2nd year. I kind of talked with the school for a while, took a few months, but we ended up creating a new class that did calculus in just 1 year, which I took in 10th grade, and they encouraged that and welcomed that. And then from there, that led to multivariable calc in 11th grade and now linear algebra, which they hired a new teacher for in 12th grade. So they've really helped to encourage that learning, helped to encourage that growth. What's most special to me about the New Roads learning community is probably the sense of community that permeates throughout the entire learning process. There's a lot of group projects, there's a lot of working together, and I think going back to this idea of diversity, because we're working together, we're getting exposed to these different ideas. This learning isn't happening in a vacuum, it's happening in the real world, and that real world is complicated. There is no one right answer, and I think that the way the teachers teach, the way they conduct classes, the way we learn, there is no, this is, the answer to how this, to this historical event, to this potential idea, whatever it may be. It's always discussion-based, it's always everyone in the community working together to solve a problem, whether that's as simple as something in math class, there's maybe 5 different ways to solve it, and we're all going to work through it in different ways and then kind of explain those different ideas to each other. Or something like an English class where we're all analyzing a book from our own unique perspectives and kind of having a respectful discourse and discussion about those different ideas. There's no one right answer. It's about the process. It's about what can we extrapolate from this. Being at New Roads really influenced the schools that I was applying to and that I'm now attending. I'm going to Harvey Mudd, which is a very small school similar to New Roads, only about 900 people. It's very one-on-one, very personal relationships with your professors, actually getting to know them, not these large lecture halls. And so these are ideas that are really important, really core principles of New Roads that mattered a lot to me. And so I really was looking for those ideas in my actual college search. And I think furthermore, New Roads' intellectual rigor, constantly challenging me to take the next step, to do actual research, like an ISP, to do things like that in high school have really prepared me for college and beyond, because that is what's really happening. It's all about learning. New Roads has really taught me how to learn. And that's really what it comes down to, right? When we're going into college, when we're going into life beyond that, it's continuously learning throughout your whole life. New Roads has really taught me how to learn, which I think is really going to be important for no matter what I do in the future. But I also think that New Roads' commitment to diversity, to social justice, to the environment, all of these things are ideas that are really important no matter what we're pursuing these days, because these permeate all aspects of life in the modern world. And so the commitment to them, the importance of them, the true understanding of these topics is going to be really relevant as I go forward. New Roads' culture is truly unique in that it really does bring together every possible person you can imagine. I've been, you know, I was at other schools before. There really is nowhere else that I've been that's like it. That truly is such a perfect embodiment of society as a whole. That takes you know, picture anybody you can imagine. There's going to be someone like that at New Roads. And so that really is powerful because it really does create that impossibly wide breadth of opinion, that impossibly wide understanding of all of these different aspects of people's lives.
Okay, well, Jordan has a lot of information in there, but he does such a wonderful job of bringing, I think, the threads together of what we've wanted to share about New Roads and education reimagined in the form of our school. I think we've still got a little bit of time, so I'm just going to stop the sharing so I can actually, we can see everyone and welcome any questions that people might have for Luthern, Mario, or Daniela. And people are welcome to put that in the chat, or if you'd like to just unmute yourself and ask them, you're welcome to.
Hey, I just wanted to make a comment that I really appreciated the presentation and just the emphasis on the students and their journey. I think it really shows how much you prioritize and put the student at the center of their learning. So I just really appreciated that.
Thank you, Khadija.
There is a question in there, Mark.
In the chat. Sorry there. What allows this level of personalization at your school? Who would like to take that one?
If I could just at least start some response to that question. I think I talked about it a bit with the tenets of climate and culture at New Roads, that the second tenet, I talked about radical inclusion, holistic integration. The second tenet is relational orientation. And so our whole focus around the way we interact within the space of our field is grounded in relationships. So as I said, one of the things we do at the classroom level is to never promote transactional exchanges between adults and kids. It's something that's very subtle that takes place in education that we don't really think of. Parents even started, right? You know, if you're good, I'll give you this. If you do your homework, then I'm going to give you this. Okay, right? And it starts off a really poor practice of not teaching kids how to value a thing in itself. And so we turn our attention really to the relationships and really try to teach kids at a very young age that the most transformative agent in the human experience begins with relationships, the types of healthy relationships you build with other people. And so it really permeates the whole entire New Roads experience, that it's relationally driven. At every opportunity, at every turn we have, we emphasize the power of relationships and showing kids what relationships can do. Not necessarily just the outcome of relationships, but also the relationship itself. So I'm thinking about a student named Noah, who was a filmmaker for many years ago. And we all knew he had a deep passion for filmmaking. And that student ended up ultimately being introduced to a very influential filmmaker through the school. And when that student spoke about the benefits of what came out of that, the emphasis that the student placed was not on the outcome of getting into a really great film school, which he did. It was really about the relationship that he developed with the person that we'd introduced him to, and the folks at New Roads who put him in touch with that person, and the community that held him and loved him as they knew what his passions were and how to steer him toward the place that would allow him to realize those passions. And so again, this whole focus on relationships really is everything in terms of the New Roads experience.
Well, and I'll say, and Daniela, you may want to pick up on this a little bit, but the program, the New Roads program, is built in such a way from the time they're in kindergarten to really allow for choice and to, yes, to provide for a solid foundation in the social sciences, humanity, and the sciences. But I mean, even in the elementary school, the kids learn how to research their own wonderings. You know, there are wonder projects in every single grade that really invite the students to explore what it is their questions are in a research-based way, and they learn how to work with adults and ask good questions. And this continues on in the middle school, where they have passion projects and call to action projects. And all of this is about an invitation to really discover who they are. And the teachers are very well skilled in differentiation in meeting kids where they are socially, emotionally, intellectually, because we are built on, on mind-based education with the assumption that you meet children where they are, you find a desirable level of challenge. So our math classes are targeted in that way. Like, for instance, the kids who are in our 7th grade are 12, 13 years old, or 13 or 14. They can be in pre-algebra or they can be in pre-calculus. And that, so New Roads is not really built on the idea of grade levels as much as it is in meeting kids where they are socially, emotionally, intellectually. And I think that extends to the co-curricular program as well. Daniela, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Well, the only piece I would add to, and this kind of answers the next question, which is about a personalized learning journey, logistics of planning courses, and can you cover 100% of learners' interests 100% of the time? I think, one piece that New Roads does very well, and I know this has been said over and over again, is it really focuses on relationships. We focus on relationships at the school. And so one of the first interactions you'll have at the school is you'll meet with one of our administrators. The family will meet with one of our administrators, and there's a discussion around, what are your child's interests? What fuels your child's learning? What do they delight in learning about? And in our co-curricular program, we offer, I would say, over 100 electives between the middle and upper school. And so students are able to choose, the courses that they take, whether that be digital media or film or art, speech and debate. There's so many classes for them to choose from. And then we also are able to talk about their academic program and what their needs are, and their schedules reflect that. There aren't schedules at New Roads that are 100% alike. We make sure that our students are in courses that motivate them and that they feel challenged in, but not too challenged. And that's a bit of a, that's a bit of a conversation. We have to talk about that a lot at New Roads. But yes, I would say that in our work as administrators at the school, we really emphasize that students should be in classes that motivate them and interest them, and that help them soar to newer heights. So that's something that we work with very closely with our families.
And I think that the other concept I would put on there is that we expect the teachers to be fully involved in their full lives. That teachers are not only looking at them through the lens of their cognitive development, but they're also taking an interest in getting to know who they are. We don't, and it's even our statement of philosophy, we don't refer to children as, students. In our statement of philosophy, we refer to them as young people, because from the time they're in kindergarten, we take them seriously, intellectually, emotionally. And I think the other piece, and this is part of the climate and culture, is that we call ourselves a village. And I think the assumption is that we're all responsible for the upbringing of these children. So whether it's the teachers in the classroom, or it's the administrators, or it's the staff, or it's security guards, or it's facilities, or it's other parents whose children, everyone takes ownership of our responsibility to develop these children and to take an interest in them. And so the notion of reaching each one of them and really connecting with each one of them really does take the whole village.
Yeah, and when we talk about holistic integration, bringing people together across a wide spectrums of difference, one of those wide spectrums of difference is the generational difference. So the relationship between the kids and the adults, we create lots of opportunities and spaces where kids and adults interact across wide fields of difference that are not specifically academically driven. So our advisory program, a lot of the special programming that we do, our affinity groups, again, the co-curricular program, the student clubs, these are all spaces where we're creating opportunities to bring students and to bring kids and adults together across wide spectrums of difference, but to have that be a holistic process, and a holistic process of supporting the growth of young people. Like Lutheran said, we don't refer to them as kids, right? We move away from just merely, oh, you're a kid, right? And creating that type of a framing. No, you're a young person figuring out your place in the world, and I'm here to support you in doing that.
And I think the assumption, Mario, and I find this every day, is that the assumption that we have as much to learn from them as to teach them. And I think that that's very built into New Roads, because in many ways, we're constantly evolving to be able to equip them to adapt to the world in which they're living, a world in which we did not grow up. And so I think that we sort of see that the education needs to continue to grow in that way. And I think the other thing that's really unique about New Roads is it's not only the kids who win the verbal or a mathematics lottery that are celebrated and honored for their potential. We really do honor, intelligence and creativity in all of its various forms. And I think that opens up space for each child to be valued as a unique individual. And a lot of that comes from, I think, the nature of the interactions, as Mario is saying. I think that, the parents, the students, even the other faculty members, they are very aware of the, being present with the children. And that's the expectation. The expectation is that we are present, we're fully present with them all the time.
Well, thank you, Luther. And I think that's a wonderful place to sort of conclude. I know that we're the group needs to move to another session shortly, but I just want to say on behalf of New Roads School and to everyone here, we thank you very much for coming along today and learning more about our community, how we're approaching education. I've included in the chat, my email and our school's website. If you'd like to learn more, if you'd like to reach out, or if you're ever over visiting, we issue an open invitation to any of you to come and visit and learn more about what we do. But thank you so much for this morning where we are, and wishing you all the best for the rest of this summit. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.